All right, now to the controversy surrounding former Baltimore Ravens running back Ray Rice. A source tells CNN Atlantic City police described the video showing Rice punching his then fiancee to Ravens head of security. And ESPN is now reporting the head of security shared that detailed description with team executives. The Ravens responded to that in a statement saying, quote, the ESPN.com Outside the Lines article contains numerous errors, inaccuracies, false assumptions, and perhaps misunderstandings, end quote. Well, this comes after NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell spoke about his handling of the growing controversy yesterday.
Unfortunately, over the past several weeks, we have seen all too much of the NFL doing wrong. That starts with me. I said this before, back on August 28th, and I say it again now. I got it wrong in the handling of the Ray Rice matter, and I'm sorry for that. I got it wrong on a number of levels.
All right, let's check in with our legal guys. Avery Freeman, a civil rights attorney and law professor in Cleveland. Richard Herman, a New York criminal defense attorney and law professor, joining us from Las Vegas. Good to see you both, gentlemen.
Hi, Frederica.
Welcome back, Fred.
Thanks so much.
You made it. You made it.
I made it indeed. We'll talk more about that later, the survival skills that had to come into play. All right, so let's talk more about this. So if indeed the ESPN report turns out to be true, did the Baltimore Ravens have a legal obligation to describe this video to Roger Goodell? And if indeed that were to have taken place, wouldn't that compel him to want to see it? Richard.
Well, Fred, I don't know if it's a technical legal obligation, but the Ravens are contracted as a team in the NFL. They have all sorts of responsibilities to turn over and be forthright and open with the commissioner's office. And getting this information, they should have turned it over immediately. But the NFL should have been able to get the same report that the Ravens claim they got. And when Goodell stands up there and says he got it wrong on numerous occasions, and we look, as your reporters, Nick Valencia brought up before, how they treated the New Orleans Saints in the past, Goodell, how he has this supreme power in him. If you are looking for credibility in the NFL, Goodell must leave now. If a player if allegations are filed against a player, players get suspended. They get suspended. Why doesn't Goodell get suspended? Because there's allegations against him. And he put his cronies in to investigate them. No good. No good, Fred. Big problems in the NFL.
Well, I think it's interesting, too, Avery, because the policy, the code of conduct, really leaves it to the discretion of the commissioner. So I don't know what kind of policy he has to adhere to, but for the players, it's very clear that, he gets to be, the judge and the jury, essentially. Will that likely change?
That's right. Well, you know what? Rachel Nichols showed great journalism heroics yesterday during the press conference and asked the commissioner, look, if you're the judge and jury, as you put it, Frederica, how is there any way of checks? Is there a system of checks and balances? And he said, well, everything's on the table, meaning, of course, he didn't answer the question. But I want to take it back to the question you're asking about the legality. If the Ravens knew about it, I think they had a legal and a moral obligation to share it with the league. And frankly, the Associated Press claims that Atlantic City law enforcement shared it with the league back in April. So there are a multitude of errors, mistakes that continue on. And I think the turning point, Frederica, on legal issues was when Rachel Nichols said, look, the same law firm that you have negotiating television deals, you're assigning to do the investigation in the Ray Rice case. That's the end. Where Richard and I are actually in agreement, and it is that Roger Goodell, both morally and legally, I think it's time for him to go.
You do? Okay, well,
absolutely.
Before that is or would happen, because he's already said he hasn't even given that any consideration, he does promise there will be some sort of policy changes, code of conduct being one of them. And in right now, the NFL personal conduct policy, it does say that it will be considered conduct detrimental for covered persons to engage in violent and or criminal activity. But certainly, Richard, it does seem to be, fairly arbitrary. What is detrimental? Does it mean suspension? Does it mean removal? And when Goodell says that he is going to revamp or, I guess rewrite this personal conduct policy, what does that policy need to say? Does it have to spell out specifically whether you're a suspect, whether there is evidence of, whether you are convicted? Because right now it doesn't spell out with that kind of specificity.
And that's the problem, Fred, and that's why you have a criminal justice system. And that's why an organization like the NFL, which has numerous flaws in it, and which is getting bombarded with media coverage today on these issues, and people seem to think this is going to cure the world's issues here and domestic battery, et cetera, because the NFL has a few players involved in it. That's not going to happen. But the NFL, Fred, is in trouble right now, and that's why you have the criminal justice system with the powers and the investigative tools they have. It's very dangerous when you give those powers to a man like the commissioner of the NFL to unilaterally make determinations on athletes' lives. The NFL lifespan is maybe 5-6 years for a player, Fred, and it's over for them. And to suspend and terminate, it's extremely important, and they don't have the ability, I think, to do it. That's the problem.
So, Avery, you're disagreeing on a lot of that, but is this any different from any mainstream employer, that there is, code of conduct policies? They can make a decision on when to remove you from your job if you have violated their conduct or their policy on conduct. Is this the same or is it different here?
Well, the difference is I don't think the criminal justice system has anything to do with the employment policies. That's been around the policy you quoted for 7 years. For 7 years, without any consequence. It's amorphous. It doesn't tell players what is permissible, what is not. Frankly, it's time to change the policy. They could have done it a long time ago. And let me tell you something. If somebody at Turner or CNN screws up doing something like what we saw with Ray Rice, we don't have to worry about the criminal justice system. That employee is gone, and the rules should be the same for the NFL.
All right, guys. I know we're not done with this topic. It will come back. We know it will. But there's yet another case we want you to weigh in on, and we come back. Plus, police may not like Apple's new operating system. It keeps more of your information private than the old one. We'll tell you how it works and why law enforcement may not be pleased. Next.